Thank you for being here with me today. I want to start by saying something I don't say often enough. I appreciate you. Whoever you are, wherever you're listening from. The fact that you chose to spend a part of your day with me means more than you know. Now, let me tell you about the Thanksgiving that changed everything. My name is Gerald Hayes. I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years working as a high school history teacher in Dayton, Ohio. I coached the debate team for 20 of those years. I chaperoned prom. I stayed late to help kids who were failing not because they were stupid, but because nobody at home was paying attention. I gave that school, that town, and those kids everything I had. And when I retired, I thought finally, I get to give that same energy to my own family. I have 2 sons and a daughter. My oldest son, my older boy, is 41. He works in finance in Columbus. He married a woman who I tried to love. And I did try. I genuinely did. My second son is 38. He lives about 40 minutes from me, which used to feel close and lately has felt like 400 miles. And my daughter is 34. She's the one I thought understood me best. I'll tell you more about that later. And I want you to hold on to that thought. Because the part about my daughter is the part that still keeps me up at night. Their mother, my wife Carol, passed away 9 years ago. Breast cancer. She was 56 years old, and she was the kind of woman who made every room warmer just by walking into it. After she died, I won't pretend I handled things perfectly. I went quiet for a while. I know that grief does things to a person that you can't explain until you've lived it. But I came back. I found my footing. I started cooking again, which Carol always said was my love language. I joined a woodworking club. I made friends. I built a life. What I did not do, and I want to be very clear about this, was become a burden. I never asked my children for money. I never called in the middle of the night in a panic. I drove myself to every doctor's appointment. I shoveled my own driveway until 2 winters ago when my back made it clear that era was over. I was, by any reasonable measure, a man who had his life together. But somewhere along the way, I became invisible to them. It happened slowly, the way most painful things do. The Sunday calls got shorter. My older boy started letting them go to voicemail. My second son would respond to my texts with one word, Fina, good. Bosu. My daughter would make plans and cancel them. And she always had a reason, a real reason. A work deadline, or her son's soccer game, or a headache that turned into a migraine. And I always said it was okay. Because what else do you say? You say it's okay. You say we'll do it another time. You say I love you and you mean it, and you hope they mean it too. Last Thanksgiving, I invited all 3 of them to my house. I'd been planning it since September. I wrote out the menu on a notepad the way Carol used to do. All the things we'd make together when the kids were young. Roast turkey, cornbread, stuffing with sage and celery. The recipe her mother gave us the first year we were married. Sweet potato casserole with the brown sugar crust. My second son used to scrape off the pan before anyone else could get to it. Cranberry sauce, made from scratch. Not from a can. Green bean casserole. Pumpkin pie and apple pie, both. Because I could never decide between them and neither could my kids. I started the prep 2 days early. I brined the turkey Wednesday morning. I made the pie crust from scratch, and I laughed a little at myself for it. Standing in my kitchen at 7 in the morning, in my old flannel shirt, crimping pie dough like I had somewhere important to be. I set the dining room table the night before Thanksgiving. Good tablecloth. Carol's good dishes that we only used on holidays. 8 settings me. My 3 kids. My older boy's wife. My second son's girlfriend. My daughter's husband. And my oldest grandchild who's 7 now and loves pie almost as much as I do. I lit a candle in the center of the table. I stood there and looked at it for a moment. I thought about Carol. I thought about how she used to squeeze my hand under the table every Thanksgiving when everyone was seated and the food was out and everything felt whole. I missed her. I always miss her. But I also felt something that night that I hadn't felt in a while. I felt ready. I felt like maybe this year something would click back into place. Thanksgiving morning, I was up at 5. Turkey in the oven by 6. Coffee on the counter. The house smelled like everything good. They were supposed to arrive at 2 o'clock. At 1:30, I took off my apron and changed into the blue button-down my daughter gave me for my birthday 2 years ago. I combed my hair. I sat down in the living room with my coffee and waited. 2 o'clock came and went. I told myself traffic. It's always traffic on Thanksgiving. 2:30. I checked my phone. Nothing. At 2:45. I sent a group text to all 3 of them. Just a simple one. Hey, turkey's resting. Come on in whenever you're close. With a little turkey emoji because my granddaughter taught me how to use those and I thought it might make someone smile. My older boy responded at 3:07. Sorry, Dad. We're not coming. Sarah's family needed us last minute. Should have told you sooner. That was it. That was the entire message. I read it 3 times. Should have told you sooner. Not we're so sorry. Not we'll make it up to you. Should have told you sooner. Like being a day late, returning a library book. Like it was a minor inconvenience to them and not a meal I had been building for 2 months. My second son didn't respond at all. Not that day. My daughter texted at 3:22. Dad, I'm so sorry. Derek's parents surprised us. They drove up from Tampa, and we couldn't say no. You understand. Right, we'll do a late dinner soon, I promise. You understand. Right. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. The turkey was on the counter under foil. The table was set for 8 people, and it would feed only 1. I looked at Carol's good dishes. I looked at the candle I had lit, and I thought about the word understand. Whether understanding something means it doesn't hurt. Whether being a reasonable person means you aren't allowed to feel the weight of being an afterthought. I didn't respond to either of them. Not yet. I made myself a plate. I sat at the head of the table alone, and I ate. The food was good. Genuinely good. And there is something quietly devastating about eating a good meal by yourself in a quiet house on a holiday. I don't have a different way to say that. It is what it is. Before I went to bed that night, I did something I told myself was just curiosity. I opened the family group chat, a thread my daughter had created 3 years ago when she wanted us all to be able to share photos of my grandkids. And I scrolled back through that day's messages. They had been active in that chat all morning. My older boy posted a photo of his drive. My daughter sent a laughing emoji about something Derek's mother said. My second son was in there too. Checking in. Joking around. None of them had mentioned me. Not my dinner. Not the invitation. Not a single word about the fact that they had all made a decision, quietly and collectively, to simply not show up. And then I found the message that I will never be able to forget for as long as I live. It was from my second son, sent at 12:48 in the afternoon, about an hour before they were supposed to arrive at my house. He had written, and I'm going to read this to you exactly as he wrote it. Does anyone actually feel like driving out to Dad's today? The game's on, and honestly, his house smells like old carpet, and I just don't feel like doing the sad, obligatory thing. My daughter had responded with a laughing emoji. My older boy had written back, yeah, I already told Sarah we're going to her parents. Dad won't make a big deal out of it. He never does. I put my phone down on the nightstand. I turned off the lamp. I lay in the dark for a long time. And I want to be honest with you, the first thing I felt was not anger. The first thing I felt was something much quieter and much worse than anger. It was recognition. The slow, terrible recognition that this had been going on for a long time, and I had been telling myself a story about it that was not true. Dad won't make a big deal out of it. He never does. They weren't wrong. I never did. I swallowed it every time. I said it's okay. I said next time. I said I understand. And what that had taught them, without me ever meaning to teach it, was that I had no limits. That I was a place you could put your guilt and it would absorb it quietly and never push back. I decided that night that I was done absorbing. Now, before I tell you what I did, I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want to know, where are you right now? And what time is it where you're listening? Drop it in the comments. I love knowing who's out there with me. There's something about knowing you're not alone. Even in the hard moments, that makes those moments easier to carry. The next morning, I called my attorney. His name is Paul Whitmore, and he's been my attorney for 18 years. Handled Carol's estate. Helped me set up my own will back when the kids were teenagers. He's a decent man. He picked up on the second ring. I told him I needed to talk. He said, "Come in Monday." I came in Monday. I want to be clear about what I did and why I did it. I was not acting out of spite. I was acting out of clarity. There is a difference. And the difference matters to me, even if it doesn't matter to anyone else. I had a will that divided my estate 3 equal ways among my children. The house, my retirement accounts, Carol's jewelry, which I had been keeping in a locked box in my bedroom closet because I always thought someday my daughter would want her mother's things. A collection of first edition books that I'd been building for 30 years. Everything equal. Everything assumed. Everything inherited by people who had decided that spending a holiday with me was a sad, obligatory thing. I told Paul I wanted to make changes. I also told him about something I had been thinking about for several months before any of this happened. There is a scholarship fund at the high school where I taught for 31 years. Small thing. Started by a retired colleague of mine. Awarded each year to a graduating senior who demonstrates character and community commitment. The kind of kid who stays late to help set up the food drive. The kind of kid who checks on classmates who are struggling. The kind of kid, frankly, that I used to be, and that I spent my career trying to find and encourage. I made a substantial contribution to that fund, the largest single contribution it had ever received. I asked that it be named in Carol's memory. Then I called a real estate agent, not to sell immediately, but to understand my options. My house is paid off. It's a 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood that has gotten significantly more valuable in the last 10 years. I wanted to know what it was worth. I wanted to know what a thoughtful, unhurried decision about it would look like. The number she gave me was higher than I expected. I wrote it down on a notepad and I put it in my desk drawer and I sat with it. I also did one more thing that week. And this one I want to tell you about carefully because I think it's the part that surprised my children the most. I have a neighbor named Frank Delgado. He moved in 3 years ago after his own divorce. And we fell into a friendship the way you do, when you're both men of a certain age who have learned to appreciate a slow evening and a good cup of coffee. Frank is 67. He's a retired electrician. He's the funniest person I know and also one of the most genuinely decent. We walk together most mornings. About 2 miles. Through the neighborhood and back. I told Frank what happened on Thanksgiving. All of it. Including the messages. He listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I value most about Frank. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Gerald, when's the last time you did something just for yourself? Something that had nothing to do with being somebody's father or somebody's dad or somebody's anything." I thought about it. I couldn't remember. "Then maybe that's where you start," he said. So that's what I did. I started there. I booked a trip, something I had been thinking about for years and always delayed because there was never a right time or the kids needed something or it felt indulgent. Carol and I had always talked about going to Portugal, Lisbon. Specifically, she had a picture torn from a magazine tucked in a book on her nightstand. A photograph of those tiled buildings, and that particular quality of afternoon light. She never got there. I had kept that photograph in my desk for 9 years without doing anything about it. I called a travel agent, and I booked 2 weeks in Lisbon for the following April. Good hotel, walking tours, a cooking class, a day trip to Sintra. Everything Carol had circled in that magazine picture. I was going to go for both of us. My children found out about the will changes in a way I had not planned, which is to say through my older boy's wife, who has a cousin who works at a law firm in the same building as Paul's office. Small world. Small city. And I suppose I should have anticipated that. My older boy called me on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after my meeting with Paul. His voice had an edge to it that I recognized from when he was a teenager and felt he had been treated unfairly. He said, "Dad, I'm hearing some things about your will." I said, "What are you hearing?" he said. "That you've made changes. Significant ones." I said, "That's correct." There was a pause. Then he said, "Can you tell me what that means?" I said. "It means I made changes. I'd encourage you not to think too much about the specifics, because the specifics are not really the point." "What is the point?" I thought about it for a moment. I thought about Thanksgiving morning, about the table I had set, about Carol's good dishes, about the candle. I thought about the word obligatory. I thought about my second son's message and my daughter's laughing emoji. "The point," I said, "is that I spent a long time making myself small so that the people I love would feel comfortable, and I've decided to stop doing that." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Dad, we can talk about Thanksgiving. We should have handled that better. I know that we can talk." I said, "But I want you to understand something. The conversation we need to have has nothing to do with money. The money is just the thing you found out about. The conversation we need to have is about whether I matter to this family. Not my house. Not my estate. Me, Gerald, your father. Whether I am someone worth showing up for." He didn't have an answer for that. Not right then. My daughter called 2 days later. Her voice was different from her brother's. Less defensive. More uncertain. She said, "Dad, I've been thinking about what I wrote in that chat. The MOI. I know you saw it." I said, "I did." She said, "I'm ashamed of that. I want you to know I'm ashamed of it." I believed her. That's the hard thing about my daughter. I have always believed her. She is not a cruel person at her core. She made a careless choice in a private moment that turned out not to be so private. And she has to live with that. And watching her live with it is not something I take pleasure in. I said, "I know you are. And I love you. And love is not the question. The question is whether love shows up, whether it puts on its coat and drives 40 minutes, whether it says no to Derek's parents one time because your father cooked for 2 days and set a table and lit a candle." She cried a little. "He lit her." Then I said, "I'm going to Portugal in April. I'd like to send you some pictures from there. I'd like to tell you about it when I get back. I'd like for us to figure out how to be in each other's lives in a way that is honest and real. But I can't keep being the only one who shows up. I am 63 years old, and I have more runway behind me than ahead of me, and I am not going to spend what's left of it waiting by a phone." There was a long silence, and then she said, very quietly, "I hear you. Dad." My second son called, eventually. It took him longer. He was the one who had written the original message, the one about the sad, obligatory thing. The old carpet. He is also the one I have always had the most complicated relationship with. The one who has his mother's stubbornness and his own considerable pride. He called on a Sunday morning. He didn't apologize right away. He talked around it for a while. I made some observations about how we had all been distant since Carol died. How he thought maybe I hadn't been easy to reach either. And I listened to all of it because I think he deserved to be heard even if I didn't agree with every word. When he finished, I said, "You might be right about some of that. I was not always easy to reach in the years after your mother died. Grief made me go somewhere for a while. I've thought about that." He was quiet. I said, "But I came back. I came back, and I've been here and I've been trying. And what I read in that chat told me that my trying has not been landing. And rather than keep trying in the same way and getting the same result, I decided to do something different." He said, "What are you doing different?" I said. "Living. Actually living, not waiting." Another silence. Then he said, "That trip to Portugal." "Yes. Mom always wanted to go there." "I know. I said, "That's why I'm going." I heard something shift in his voice, then, just slightly, the way ice cracks in spring, not broken, but something moving underneath. He said, "Can I call you when you get back?" I said. "I would like that very much. I want to tell you one more thing before I close. And it's the thing I keep coming back to when I lie awake at 3 in the morning, which I still do sometimes. Because I am 63, and sleep is less reliable than it used to be. I don't know how this ends. I want to be honest about that. I don't know if my children and I find our way back to something real. I don't know if the call from my second son is the beginning of something or just a moment that fades. I don't know if my daughter's shame becomes change or stays shame. I don't know. And I have made my peace with not knowing, which is itself a thing that took a long time. What I know is this. I set a table for 8 people on Thanksgiving, and nobody came. And I had a choice in that moment. I could fold that hurt up small and put it somewhere deep, and go on being the man who never makes a big deal out of it. Or I could let it mean something. Let it tell me the truth about where I was and what I deserved and what I still had time to do. I chose the second thing. I leave for Lisbon in 11 days. My bags are half packed. I bought a new camera. A real one. Not just my phone. Because I want to do this right. I want to stand in front of those tiled buildings in that afternoon light and take a photograph worth keeping. I want to sit in a cafe and drink coffee that's too strong and watch people walk by and genuinely feel that I am somewhere I chose to be. Carol would have loved it. I'm going to love it for her. If you've ever sat at a table that nobody came to, whether it was Thanksgiving or a birthday or just a Tuesday when you needed someone and the phone stayed quiet, I want you to know that I see you. That loneliness is real. It is one of the most real things there is. And you are not wrong for wanting more than an afterthought. You deserve to be shown up for. So does everybody. So do I. If this story meant something to you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And drop a comment. Tell me where you are. Tell me if you've ever been in a moment like this. Tell me what you did. I read every single one. This is the vt-sweetrevenge community, and I am grateful every day that you're in it. Thank you for listening.